Hello, this is Jane Goodall, and I really wish I could be with you in person because I think this conference is really, really important. However, I'm sending you this message from the UK. I want to start by saying that attitudes to animals vary depending on the culture and the way children are brought up. To love bullfighting or hate it, for example, to stroke a dog or throw stones at it. For some people, animals are simply things that can be owned, studied, killed, eaten. For others, they are companions to be loved, though unfortunately they may be loved in the wrong way with no recognition of their true needs, like the songbird in a cage, the little dog carried around, dressed in a jacket to match the owner's outfit. But for some, animals are a way to reconnect with nature, a doorway into our innermost animal selves. I was 26 when I was chosen to live in the forest and be the first person ever to learn about the complex lives of chimpanzees in the wild. They are our closest living relatives, differing from us in the composition of DNA by only just over 1%. After I'd been studying them for about 2 years, documenting all the ways their behavior is so like ours, I was told by my mentor, Dr. Louis Leakey, that I had to go to Cambridge University to work for a PhD. I was nervous. I'd never even been to college. When I got there, to my dismay, I was told by learned professors that I'd done everything wrong. I shouldn't give my subjects names, but numbers. And I couldn't talk about their vivid personalities, their ability to reason, or their emotions, happiness, sadness, fear, and so on. Why? Because those were exclusively human characteristics. Nor should I have empathy with my subjects. A good scientist must be objective, and, so they said, you can't be objective if you have empathy, which just isn't true. Fortunately, I had a wonderful teacher when I was a child who taught me that in this respect these erudite professors were wrong. That was my dog, Rusty. I'm sure all of you will agree. You can't spend time with an animal and not know that we are not the only beings with personalities, minds, and emotions. When a visitor to an aquarium a while back told how she saw an octopus wedge a pebble between the halves of a giant clam so that he or she could extract the flesh without risk of losing an arm, most scientists, most people didn't believe her. How could an octopus reason? Until recently, the claims of parrot owners and others who spent quality time with birds were told that birds couldn't reason because their brain wasn't designed for such mental ability. But now, finally, the intelligence of octopuses and birds and so many other creatures is accepted and eagerly studied. After getting my PhD, I returned to Gombe and continued my studies. But when in 1986 I saw secretly filmed footage of our closest relatives who could live up to 70 years being beaten into submission to perform in circuses, taken from their mothers and sold as pets, and worst of all, imprisoned in 5-foot by 5-foot cages in medical research labs, then I knew I had to try to help. Surprisingly, I got permission to go into a couple of these laboratories, and I saw the inmates with my own eyes. And it was even worse. The only contact for these very social animals was with humans in white coats, and often this was a prelude to painful experimental procedures. Fortunately, over the years, I was joined by many organizations in the fight to end these inhumane conditions. And in the end, it turned out that chimpanzees, after all, were not good models for human disease. despite their genetic similarity. Still, it was about 40 years before almost all research chimpanzees, more than about 1,300 in laboratories around the world, were released into sanctuaries. But there are still many highly intelligent primates bred in captivity or even captured from the wild and subjected to painful experiments. And just think of the millions of dogs, rats, mice, cats, and a whole variety of other animals who are imprisoned and subjected to repeated painful procedures. And what makes this all the worse is that all these animals are sentient beings capable of feeling frustration, depression, fear, and pain. Fortunately, more and more scientists are concluding that most experiments on animals, after all, are contributing very little towards cures for disease in humans, and even, in some cases, may provide information that hinders progress in this respect. Moreover, there is increasing research on alternatives to the use of live animals. For one example, Vivodyne can now test new drugs on thousands of laboratory-grown 3D human tissues at one time. The good news is that not only can this save thousands of animals from inhumane procedures, but it's also much cheaper and more reliable. Then we come to the use of animal parts in Chinese traditional medicine, which is in demand in many Asian countries and even other countries, and which causes great suffering for thousands of sentient animals. Rhinos are being pushed towards extinction by a demand for their horns. One female was found with her calf, and she was still alive with half her face hacked off. How they saved her is a miracle. The scales of pangolins are also used, believed to have medicinal value. Yet both horn and scales are just chitin, the same as our fingernails and our toenails. Tigers were nearly exterminated in the wild, in part by the demand for their bones for various concoctions. So there are now tiger farms where the big cats are bred and live in barren and totally unsuitable conditions. Donkeys are killed for the gelatin made from their skin, which is used for many medicinal Chinese traditional medicines. But it's the Asian black bears, or moon bears, as well as brown bears and sun bears, that suffer the most, because they're kept in such tiny cages that often they can't even turn around or even stand up. There, often for life, they must endure the very painful process by which bile is extracted from the gallbladder. And unlike horn and scale, that have no medicinal value, this isn't true for bear bile. But pathology reports have shown that bile from sick bears, and these imprisoned bears are often sick, is often contaminated with blood, pus, feces, urine, bacteria, and even cancer cells. And so there's very real risk that users will get sick. And there is medicinally approved alternative that is synthesized in the laboratory, and I just hope that more and more people will come to realize the advantage of this laboratory synthesized alternative. 2 foundations are working to rescue these bears, Animal Asia and Free the Bears. I've known Jill Robinson, founder of Animals Asia, for many years, and I was visiting her sanctuary near Chengdu when a rescued bear arrived in his tiny cage. I was given the honor of naming him Mandela. It's when you see suffering with your own eyes that you truly appreciated the dedicated work of Animals Asia and Save the Bears. I could say more, but I'll leave it to those who are working to save them. Premarin is a medication that alleviates symptoms of menopause in women. It's made from the urine of pregnant female horses, and over the years, hundreds of thousands of these mares have suffered in horribly cruel conditions. It's used, the medication, in America, Europe, and China. Many people have written to complain of major health problems after taking this medication, problems that stopped when they stopped taking it. Then there are the billions of animals raised for meat, eggs, and milk in the horrendously cruel factory farms. And remember, each cow, pig, chicken, turkey, and so on is a sentient being, an individual capable of feeling depression, terror, and pain. I became a vegetarian after reading Peter Singer's book, Animal Liberation, about factory farms. And I became a vegan after learning about the torture endured by dairy cows and laying poultry. Factory farms, I must say, also have a devastating impact on the environment, because to feed the billions of prisoners, huge areas of land are cleared to grow grain. Masses of fossil fuel is used to get grain to animals to slaughter, and pieces of their bodies onto our plates. Huge amounts of precious water are needed to turn vegetable to animal protein. And then the huge herds of cattle that are allowed to graze, and though they have a better life until transport and slaughter, they do untold damage to the environment. All of these animals, especially cows, produce quantities of methane, an extremely virulent greenhouse gas. And of course, it's the greenhouse gases, particularly CO2, leading to climate change. Finally, as these animals are routinely given antibiotics just to keep them alive in the crowded and typically unhygienic conditions of factory farms, the bacteria gradually build up resistance and become the so-called superbugs, the bane of many hospitals. Moreover, many diseases such as E. coli, salmonella, and so on are frequently passed from animals to the humans who work in these factory farms. Many wild animals are illegally trafficked around the world and sold for food, clothing, use in entertainment, or as pets, and they carry a whole variety of pathogens with them. Often they've lived with these for hundreds of years and have developed immunity, but when one such pathogen crosses over to a human and bonds with a human cell, the result can be a new so-called zoonotic disease, such as COVID-19. Recently, a number of top scientists have warned that our exploitation of wildlife is likely to lead to more frequent and deadly pandemics in the future. Sri Lanka, like other Asian countries, has a problem with crop raiding and food-stealing macaque monkeys. A private company recently offered to buy, for zoos, they said, 100,000 endangered tokmak macaques. This would certainly have helped the farmers, but there were fears that the monkeys might really be used for medical research or for food. Then there was a public outcry, and to the great credit of those involved and to the Sri Lankan government, the proposed export was banned. Of course, I totally understand that monkeys can be a major problem, but we have to realize that as humans take over more and more of the monkey's habitat, they have less and less wild food. Moreover, people often feed the monkeys, and so they become aggressive, if the food is withheld. To try to solve the problem, Sri Lanka and other countries are not only creating corridors between fragmented patches of forest, but planting trees and other food that form the natural diet of macaques. In some zoos, animals get a very bad deal with cramped and so often unhygienic conditions, bad diet, and total lack of enrichment. Whales and dolphins, whose habitat is the wide ocean, suffer greatly in tanks in aquariums. So congratulations to South Korea. Bibong, Korea's last captive bottlenose dolphin, is back in the wild after more than 2 months training for life in the ocean in a sanctuary. When he's in the ocean, he will be monitored first daily, then twice a month for 6 months. Finally, we come to dogs and cats. Many dogs are left alone, shut in a house all day. Often they don't get enough exercise. Often they're not let out enough. And often they may be trained with harsh punishment. On the other hand, they may be pampered and spoiled and thus become obese. Some dogs have been bred for certain characteristics which has resulted in unintended cruelty. Flat-faced dogs, like bulldogs and Pekingese, have trouble breathing. Boxers have been bred to have narrow hips so that many purebred females can't give birth naturally and need cesareans. German shepherds get hip dysplasia, and dachshunds get back problems. And then there are the puppy mills, where bitches are forced to have one litter after another, typically in cramped and unhygienic conditions, with little, if any, exercise. Today, more and more animal welfare groups have been pressuring Crufts, the organization that awards prizes to best of breed, to change its standards, so that over the years, these problems in purebred dogs can be bred out to produce healthier dogs, and puppy mills are gradually being closed down. And abandoned dogs and cats in more and more countries are being rescued. One thing is certain. There's a real need to raise awareness among consumers, because as long as there is a demand for products, ways will be found to provide. So it's extremely important to reduce the demand for wildlife and wildlife products, for factory farmed meat, for overbred dogs, and so on. Luckily, more and more organizations have programs to spread information, and more people are aware of the true nature of animals, the cruelty with which millions are treated, and the ways in we ourselves may be harmed if we don't learn to respect animals and their environment. I've only mentioned some of the ways animals suffer from human cruelty because I haven't got time to expose the horrors of horse and greyhound racing, hunting with dogs, sports hunting, setting traps, bear baiting, dog fights, killing by poison, the bushmeat trade. The list goes on and on. But I must emphasize that during my almost 90 years on planet Earth, there have been many changes for the better, as more and more people become aware of animal sentience and suffering. And hundreds of animal welfare, animal rights groups have come into existence. Many groups are fighting illegal animal trafficking, and more countries have banned the import and sale of ivory, rhino horn, pangolin scales, parts of tigers, and so on. There's been an increase in the number of sanctuaries for all manner of rescued animals: bears, orphan baby elephants whose mothers were killed for ivory, chimpanzees rescued from medical research, from circuses, from the bushmeat trade, and bad zoos and pets, and so on. There are more sanctuaries for the rescued victims of factory farming, and more and better shelters for stray and abandoned dogs and cats. I should point out here that while government regulations and those fighting cruelty are playing a crucial role, it is also important to realize that the general public, once educated, can also make a difference. Many animal welfare organizations have educational programs for young people. In 1991, I began the Jane Goodall Institute's humanitarian and environmental program for young people from kindergarten through university and beyond. It's now in 69 countries, and every one of the thousands of groups must choose projects to help people, the environment, and at least one project to help animals. They decide what to do, roll up their sleeves, and take action. And so often they influence their parents, grandparents, teachers, and friends. We can all play an important role as consumers. We can fight factory farming by becoming vegetarian and vegan. And the vegan alternatives to meat, cheese, and fish have been developed, so sometimes it's almost impossible to tell the difference from the real thing. We can demand cruelty-free products. We must fight ignorance, help people to understand that the animals that are the focus of so much cruelty are every one of them sentient, and that they are far, far more intelligent than people once thought. The main message for all of us is that every individual makes a difference every day, and we can choose what sort of difference we make. Cumulatively, even small ethical choices on behalf of animals will move us in the right direction. I want to end by stressing the importance of storytelling. When people understand that there's so much more to a bird or cow than they thought, they're more likely to treat those animals with respect. Let me share a few that may surprise many people, some that I love. Rats can learn to perform the agility test that challenges the skill of dogs. African giant forest rats are known as hero rats. Why? Because they can be trained to detect landmines left over from civil wars. Their fantastic sense of smell detects the TNT, explosive metal, way under the ground, till the mine can then be defused. Crows can solve very complex problems, and parrots can learn hundreds of words and use them in the right context. One African grey parrot friend of mine, Nkisi, made complex patterns on paper when given a pencil. And some creative great apes love to draw or paint. And then there's Pigcasso, not Picasso, but Pigcasso, the painting pig, rescued from becoming bacon, and now her paintings are sold for $5,000. She's had 2 exhibitions of her paintings, and most importantly, she absolutely loves to do it. Many animals love to play, and not only youngsters. There's a video on YouTube that shows a cow chasing after a football, mooing in excitement, then hitting it back with her nose to her owner so he can throw it again. And then there's a young bull doing the same, but with a barrel. There's a wild crow on a sloping, snowy rooftop who flew with a tin lid to the top of the roof and stood on it as it slid down. And he repeated this at least 5 times. Then there's a pet duck who loves to play her toy piano. She doesn't get rewarded, and she also play chases with 2 small dogs. There's another YouTube of a puppy chased by a tortoise round and round. There are so many images in my mind. Pigs rescued from becoming pork, rootling in the green grass, mud flying, grunting in pure ecstasy. I was there with them. Another pig has befriended a blind buffalo. And there's a rescued chicken who snuggles up each night with her friend, the cat. I watched an orangutan spending many minutes carefully rescuing a little fledgling bird from drowning in the moat around her enclosure, and a crow gently pushing a hedgehog off a road to the safety of the verge. And as for dogs, well, it's impossible to list all the ways in which they've helped people through tough times, the bond that develops between guide dogs and their special charge, and the ways they help deaf people and autistic and traumatized children. Then I was in tears watching a therapy horse who's allowed to choose which rooms he will enter in the hospital he visits once a week. On this occasion, he walks with his handler right up to a man lying very close to death, a man who's shown no emotion of any sort since his admission. The horse gently blows on his face, then just stands very close. The patient gazes up, and now there are tears on his cheeks. The nurse lays her hand gently on the man's brow. She was almost in tears too. It is these kinds of stories and videos that will reach people's hearts. It will help them understand the true nature of animals and hopefully bring about a change in their mindset that will make them want to help make the world a better place for the animals with whom we share or should share our planet. I want to congratulate all of you who are working to make that world a reality. So let me end by saying I hope that this will be a super successful conference, that you will forge new collaborations and friendships that will help you get through the difficult times so that you don't ever need to feel alone, so that together we can seek justice for those who cannot fight for justice themselves. And now, a greeting from the Gombe chimpanzees of Africa to the orangutans, siamangs, gibbons, and all Asian animals. Good luck to you, and goodbye from me.